In 1987, Hirohiko Araki created a manga series named JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which follows the Joestar family through generations, eventually sparking multiple sequels. Currently, as of 2015, JoJo has reached a total of 8 parts and multiple anime. This review will solely focus on the 2012 anime adaptation, which covers parts 1 and 2 of the manga, titled Phantom Blood and Battle Tendency. The mentioned manga are now available in the United States, along with its English dub debut with the Warner Bros. DVD release in America. This video will be a very quick analysis of the anime, so if you want more details of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure as a whole, I recommend you watch my anime presentation videos and the subsequent reviews of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. As said earlier, JoJo is all about the passage of family lineage, as seen in such series such as Kinnikuman Man with Ultimate Muscle, or Dragon Ball with Dragon Ball Z. Because of this, many characters will either age, die, or give birth to new characters, inheriting certain family traits or even curses from the previous foes. JoJo is a shonen horror, which often includes vampires and zombies, but can often be comical, which is more prevalent in its future parts. However, the beginning is more masculine in tone, which is understandable as it was written in the late 1980s, which the popular norm of Shonen Jump at the time were manly characters as seen in City Hunter, Kinnikuman Man, Fist of the North Star, Sakigakyo Tokujuku, Saint Seiya, Space Avenger Cobra, and so on. Or, for a modern example, is the series Toriko, but despite being made in 2012, JoJo is very different even among manly shonens. But all manly series do share certain traits, therefore, part 1 and 2 of JoJo bear a heavy emphasis on the human physique, chivalry, pride, honor, and of course, manliness! What makes JoJo different from other manly titles is the series having an expressive art style in either colors or posing, but also tend to make references to various bands, musicians, and fashion brands, such as the characters named AC/DC and Vanilla Ice, which mark the more obvious examples. Each part of JoJo bears various differences, resulting in a very diverse fan base, but this 2012 anime adaptation is what starts it all. The first story of JoJo is only 9 episodes in length, which suffers a bit for having a very fast pace to the story, including the lack of certain scenes which are only found in the manga. Despite this flaw, part 1 does excel in delivering its tragic origin tale. Phantom Blood is the story of 2 men who became brothers, Jonathan Joestar and Dio Brando. Wishing for dominance, Dio wants to rid himself of the Joestar family, and obtains a stone mask, which can turn men into vampires. Jonathan Joestar is then approached by Baron Zeppeli, who knows of a martial art known as Hamon or the Ripple, which can slay vampires. The rest of the tale involves Jonathan confronting his brother, while the story gives the recurring theme of courage, honor, and the celebration of humanity defying villainy. Much of the highlight in Phantom Blood is the horror tone, mixed in with elements found in Fist of the North Star. An example of this is Jonathan and Dio bearing resemblance to Kenshiro's conflict with the villain Shin, which marks the beginning of the story. In short, part 1 may require some patience, as this part marks newcomers' first experience with not just JoJo, but even in 80s shonen. Battle shonen of the 80s are very different from the shonen of today, especially due to its manlier heroics. Because of this, viewers can feel a bit uncomfortable with their first JoJo experience, but serving as a gateway to modern anime fans are the visually appealing colors, reminiscent of the author's artwork. Additionally, part 2 of JoJo is more accessible to newcomers, to both JoJo and manly anime. Battle Tendency is made of episodes 10 through 26, which takes place 50 years after the events of part 1, starring Jonathan's grandson, Joseph Joestar. Jonathan was a very chivalrous Englishman, while Joseph debuts as an immature yet clever young man. The conflict in part 2 stems from the creators of the stone mask known as the Pillar Men, who consists of Santana, Wham, AC/DC, and Cars. Together with Joseph is Caesar Zeppeli, grandson of William Antonio Zeppeli. So as you can see, history repeats itself through their descendants, as they will face an evil that needs to be slain. Part 2 is one of those few series that manages to have a very successful sequel, and much of it is due to various ideas that up the ante. For example, the martial art Hamon is portrayed in new forms of combat, allowing for imaginative and colorful imagery. Plus, unlike part 1, there's more villains to go around, and like any battle shonen formula, the new foes are always stronger than the previous adversaries. The Pillar Men are basically an ancient race which predates vampires, thus they are on the top of the food chain. Their leader Car seeks to reign as the ultimate life form of evolution, but like the previous part, many acts of camaraderie, honor, manliness, and family are still present in both heroes and villains. These changes allow for newcomers to adjust faster to Part 2 than with Part 1, and much of this also applies to the main Joestar. In JoJo, every main character is a different member of the Joestar family, and as seen by recent polls on the JoJo Wiki and by fans in all forms of social media, many people like Joseph more than Jonathan. Or in other words, people like Battle Tendency more than Phantom Blood. For starters, Joseph is more comedic in tone, and is voiced by Tsukita Tomokazu, known for his role as Sakata Gintoki in Gintama. This newly added comedic personality is a great contrast to Jonathan, who was noble, representing a more traditional hero. Joseph, on the other hand, is sometimes compared to Yusuke Urameshi from Yu Yu Hakusho, due to their unlikely yet likable behavior as a Shonen Jump hero. And the nail of the hammer for Battle Tendency's acclaim is the usage of strategy. Many anime fans of the 2000s want their series to be smart, involving lots of dialogue, scheming, plotting, thinking, and brainstorming. Most likely because of series like Hunter x Hunter and Death Note, people are now accustomed to watching these types of fights, in which Battle Tendency just happened to have. While I do think these are the reasons why newcomers enjoy Part 2, I personally say Part 2 is the stronger story, but I don't think Part 1 is any less inferior. While Part 1 suffers in pacing, Part 2 lacks in both mentor and main villain. In comparison to Part 1, the roles of Cars and Lisa aren't as investing as Cepelli and Dio. The conclusion of both stories may have something to do with it, but I don't wish to spoil anybody. Part 1 presents itself as a darker story than Part 2, therefore there isn't much humor other than some hints of B-horror movies and exaggerated dialogue, but it also focuses mostly on hand-to-hand combat rather than trickery. I know for certain many people don't like Phantom Blood, and it's usually voted at the bottom of JoJo fan polls, but it's not a bad story. I've heard many mixed comments from different YouTubers who reviewed this series, such as, "You're not supposed to take it seriously," "Part 2 is better," "Jonathan is bland," "Part 1 is stupid and lackluster," and so on. Unless you already experienced manly anime before, you're not gonna like Part 1. And even then, it might not even be your favorite, but it's not bad. One simple reason is the villain Dio Brando, and we all know how he was treated in Part 3 Stardust Crusaders. Not too long ago, I made a character video about Jonathan Joestar in my list of top 20 most manly anime characters, where he ranked number 13. I go into detail why the character works, and hopefully by watching that video, or just my manly videos in general, you can get an idea why Part 1 works as a tragedy. Part 2 has more success and is uplifting, because it incorporated events from Part 1 into its past, but also, the theme of Part 2 was inheritance and putting an end to the family curse that lasted for 3 generations. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure 2012 only marks the beginning of JoJo, as the series will constantly change tone in both style and writing. In short, I recommend people to finish this series from beginning to end, as this may determine whether you will like JoJo at all. The story is 8 parts long with over 30 years worth of material, so it's best to get an idea of the series style by at least watching this 26 episode series before you decide to drop it. Especially when all future parts are drastically longer and obviously different in their own way. Part 1 and Part 2 don't necessarily represent all of JoJo, but it's definitely the first step in the door. To further emphasize these points, I'm working on reviews for the Phantom Blood and Battle Tendency manga. And of course, a review of Stardust Crusaders is expected, but until then, I bid farewell. I'm the manly anime hero, and I review anime so you can enjoy it.
So don't cry.